idea is that we always have a need for transformation. We've been doing transformation for a while, but in that transformation, you want somebody who's been through that transformation process, and get them into the room, because
Mhm.
what you can do alone, you can, spend hundreds of hours, or if you get with subject matter experts and talk to them about these topics, and within 10 hours, we can figure these out in a collaborative environment. Community practice is big. So in community practices, I think you can put multiple things when it comes to artificial intelligence. But one of the things that really, really pays off is to have a community practice for MLOps purposes. So me and Bobby, when we talk about these topics, we talk about like 80-20 rules, where 80% can be delivered to you, but that 20% falls on you as well, to be able to say what it is that you bring to the product that is being subscribed, or being bought from a vendor, or rented or leased, however you want to term it. There's still a lot of work that has to be done internally, and that internal work, majority of them are going to be MLOps based.
Mhm.
Similar to DevOps, where it's going to be MLOps based. And when you have a community of practice that you have to maintain and have them understand MLOps, it's really important that everybody has an alignment when it comes to MLOps. They understand MLOps from their domain expertise, and they understand MLOps somewhat from the techies expertise, right? As in programming languages and coding and so on and so forth. They don't necessarily have to be a subject matter expert of it, but they should be able to distinguish between the terminologies, so that way no terminology bleeds into one another. Me and Bobby having military background, we understand that very well, because I think Bobby, at one point, we got an email with 3,000 acronyms that was invented just that one year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, terminologies, but don't forget the acronyms. That's what MLOps is, just a bunch of
Mhm.
acronyms. So you really have to have a understanding of each other's role, because when you think about people, process, and technology, and you think about MLOps, well, of course, people, process, technology applies to everything, and it also applies to MLOps. And when you have people that are able to communicate with each other about these MLOps steps, MLOps procedures, it's important that they're communicating with each other rather than over each other.
Right. Well, I think clarity is always important in any endeavor, and there is a school of thought that AI and machine learning is going to be a panacea, but the reality is people first, right? Understanding your organization intends to use it and what that means for the people in your organization. What is their role now going to look like? Does it change at all? Is it a question of now using a different tool, but using the same kind of logic and mindset? What is the corporate strategy or the business strategy? What are our objectives? One of the most dangerous things is when you leave your corporate strategy and you allow a salesperson to come in and tell you who you are and what you want to do, how you want to be. You lose your identity, right? And in that course, your business suffers, morale suffers, your identity suffers. So how do we use ML ops in a way that delivers what we need it to deliver, but most importantly, supports our business? So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think the time is of the essence, just like any part of history that you can go back in time and say, like, well, we did this yesterday. Well, time is of the essence. We needed to win the war against the Germans back in World War II. And the reason I reference that is because time is of the essence when we had to develop that first artificial intelligence during World War II, which is the Alan Turing machine,
right.
Enigma system. And we developed it because we really needed it, and the people behind it was just one person's confidence to say, this is what we're going to develop, and this is how we're going to decrypt all the messages that are coming from the submarines and the underwater communications with the German submarines. So when we talk about time and people and the process and technologies, I think we're in that sort of mentality today where we're like, the vendors will come and rescue us. The
Yes.
vendors have their timeline. We have our own timeline,
Right.
right? And our timeline is reliant on how well do we communicate about MLOps? How well can we communicate our ideas and get people to take action on these ideas? Because I can communicate MLOps very well to me, when it comes to talking to other people, it's a totally different story, because by the time I communicated, there was no feedback loop that I have generated to say, did you understand what I said? Right.
Right.
Because if that takes you a couple more hours to research it, and you just said, whatever he said is not on Google, let's not do anything with it. What
Mm-hmm.
we're losing is a lot of time and traction. In an IBM world, they call it the AI years,
Mm-hmm.
which a lot of the big corporates are finding out these days, is that by the time you had your lunch, the information that you lost in breakfast, it's almost like an AI year, because that's the amount of training data that you have lost.
Yes.
And now that you have a gap in your training data, you're falling behind on an incremental basis every day, which grows into exponential over time. So this AI years conversation is something that not everybody can have, because everybody's not a data subject matter expert. Not
Right.
everybody's sitting on data ETLs all day long, considering how much data is, what the relevance of the data are. But everybody has to have that urgency set in them, right? That mindset to say, this is a race against the time, where, of course, we can talk about it from a national security perspective, but just in a corporate edge that you want, the competitive edge that you want, it's really a matter of, is it data and what else, right?
Right.
Because me and Bobby, we've been talking extensively about the hardware piece of it, because this hardware is the biggest game changer when people are so focused on the data piece, right? Because now you have other part of the cost analysis that you can discuss the hardware and reduce your cost using these hardwares that you can own and operate within your, I don't know, under your desk, right?
Right.
You don't have to buy a data center for these anymore, the $650 million data centers. So we really have to think through the urgency of the time. And the reason I use that World War II terminology is because there was people there that had lots of these reservations about what's possible and what's not,
Right.
right? So when they created the dials and knobs of hardware back in World War II, if you reflect on it, what you will see is that the confidence in the hardware was not there at the beginning, but it came at the end.
Right.
Now, because of consultants like us, you kind of have to look at us and say, are you sure about this hardware? And I can
Mhm.
guarantee you, I'm very sure about that hardware. Because like we talked about that, you can do it by yourself for 100 hours, but the reason me, Bobby, and everybody else can talk about it in 10 hours is because this hardware is where our confidence lies, right? These hardwares have adopted and shifted so dramatically. Even for me, it was shocking. And I'm the guy that can soar up and down on the semiconductor chips that we saw 10 years ago would not be here today, 10 years later. And it's here. And
Right.
it's mind blowing.
Right. Well, and in that space, about time is of the essence, understanding that a lot of time is wasted with non-technical people trying to provide technical solutions, right? So having the right person for the job. I spend a lot of time talking to organizations, and I'm trying to gather from them, what is it that you need to support your business, and what does that look like? And they want to talk bits and bytes. However, comma, that's not their expertise. So I spend a lot of time tactfully moving them back to, how can I support your business? What do you want? How do you want it? The technology moves quickly, but more importantly, it's not about only the technology. It's about the information that the technology generates. What information do you need to provide you that tactical advantage, that strategic advantage? What does that look like to you? What do you want to be able to do that perhaps your competitor can't do? Versus, we'll get this equipment and it's a panacea. That doesn't work like that. Not at all, right? So understanding yourself, understanding your organization is key, and understanding where you see emerging opportunities, and then validating those opportunities. Technology can help you validate or invalidate an opportunity, which is also an advantage. Sometimes it's not a question of what to do, it's a question of knowing what not to do. So making sure that the tool uh, is used in a way that really propels you forward, and not that you're just so enamored by these numbers you make business decisions that may not be the best business decision for your organization.
Yeah, I think the feasibility of your MLOps responsibility and the viability of it. If it's a frustrating concept actually, because what we're trying to do is mimic the human brain's ability to do data collection, process that data, and put that data into a feedback loop.
Mm-hmm.
Well, brain's been doing it for a very long time, and our machine learning journey has been only doing it for, like we said, like about 100 years now. And for us to, as an organization in a silo to do it, well, let's not even put time concept into that because we just don't know. It
Right.
depends on team to team. So to mimic that fashion of human brain's ability to process information for your corporate need, that 20% work, it is a challenge,
Mm-hmm.
and not to expect that expect manage that expectation. What we will need is to figure out how to just communicate that idea, how
Right.
difficult this actually is. And so when it comes to people, process, and technology, one of the things that you will see more of is that because we're talking about MLOps in this stage, it's the succession of that process from people to people.
Right.
So this is not a temporary solutions where you get it for 1 year and you're done with it. This is, if you get it in day one, you have 1 year to mature it, and then you have 10 more years to mature it even further, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a not a staggered process; it's an exponential process. So what, let's say for example, Tesla cars are a perfect example of it. They've been around for 13 some years at this point. They have grown incrementally and all of a sudden exponentially, right? It's
Right.
because its ability to train the hardware concepts, the hardware that was introduced, and ability of the hardwares to process that much data locally, process that much data through internet. It literally was exponential because the data set grew over time, and capability of processing this data meant it was an exponential growth. So for an organization to organization, you don't necessarily need to go down Tesla's road, because your MLOps is not Tesla's MLOps. Your MLOps is your MLOps specific to your need. So going back to that part about people and succession, in your people, process, and technology, you really have to set the process in a way that is adaptable to the next generation of people as well.
Right.
So if you start off today, how do you take that and retire yourself, so that way you don't retire the process, but they are able to take that same process and improve on that process. So you gotta have to leave a lot of spaces in between your process to make sure that other people can jump in and they're able to contribute to it. So again, just putting it out there that it is not that simple way we can describe it between data acquisition, data processing, and data deployment, right?
Right.
It just isn't that simple. But we have to simplify it, of course. And that's why we want to make sure that we're all using the same terminologies. We're not talking over each other, because the guy who wants a YouTube videos of robots that can do dance and make that a corporate priority, and the guy who just wants to fix their Excel sheet using machine learning, they all have the same baseline. It's just that once they're able to communicate with each other, see eye to eye, they can do both. They can do
Right.
a dancing robots and an Excel sheet that works beautifully, right?
Right.
These are all machine learning tools.
Yes. Well, when you talk about the machine learning tools as a group, you have to remember that machine learning is derived from human learning, which means it has a lot of the flaws that human learning has. So when you learn something and what you learned is no longer correct, the ability to move forward, right? New information, therefore my conclusions become different. So it's questions such as, what is your relationship? What is your business relationship to the data that you generate? And understanding all relationships require continuous maintenance, whether it's a personal relationship or corporate data or strategic data, right? It's always about the update and what does this update mean? And because it's new information, the willingness of the user to accept this new information and knowing that it's that serious, how do we then validate what is the probability that the information that we have is correct in that moment? Remember, you always have windows of opportunity. No one maintains a advantage indefinitely. It's cyclic. So what's relevant today, next week may no longer be relevant and definitely may no longer be true. So how do we, not only as people but as the systems and the processes we design have a life cycle that keeps data.
You've been listening to me and Bobby discuss artificial intelligence and machine learning, and we're talking about MLOps. And MLOps, of course, just like anything else, will have people, process, and technology. The reason we discuss these topics very much to get it in front of you is so that way you are able to join us on a weekly basis and do a Q&A with us to figure out, are you having the right strategy? Are you about to operationalize something that has feasibility and viability and cost benefit analysis? And, does it have all the things that you need in order to be tactical with it on a daily operation? So, of course, strategy, operationalizing it, making it tactical requires stage by stage approach. But one of the things that we've have seen over the last 10 years is that time is of the essence. And that's what we talked about, time is of the essence, because what matters is that you're able to strategize and operationalize and start being tactical with AI all at once, right? Because time is of the essence, because the data that you're collecting, how are you preparing those data for the future usage, or collecting the past data that is no longer going to be available in the future? What are some of those things that you have to do, right? So strategy is great, but how do you operationalize and how do you conduct an MLOps procedure on day one is a very critical piece of being successful in deploying an AI machine learning solutions. And the reason I know all of these steps, because we've been in this AI space for 10 years at this point. The first one we developed, really, there was a lot of hardware issues and there was a lot of these data privacy issues that we've experienced 10 years ago. But as time has progressed, we were able to identify these troubleshooting, the actual solutions that we knew that it will be cost optimized and it will reduce the time gaps in our deployment. So a lot of the AI solutions over the last 10 years have suffered these problems of being able to develop but not being able to deploy, right? So we've seen all sides of the equations, where in a strategy we've seen the knowledge gap, and then in development we've seen the data gaps, and in the deployment we've seen the use case gap. These are the experiences that we bring to the table from last 10 years of experience, because one, machine learning solutions can be reutilized for other machine learning purposes. But we really have to have the understanding of what it is that we're trying to use this machine learning for, and what are the use case ecosystem that we have to develop in order to be successful for our deployment of this AI machine learning.
I think it is really important to understand where you are in the organization, technically, functionally. A lot of things that we look at as far as artificial intelligence, machine learning, we're so caught up in the technology piece of it that we miss the why. So why are we doing this? What is it supposed to do for us? And how do we know that it is doing it for us? So it's very dynamic when it comes to machine learning, that if you don't have not only validation, but always check your references. So if there's other dependencies, and there's always other dependencies. So depending on your business, it could be HIPAA and high trust, it could be NIST, it could be government policy that always changes, to make sure from a day to day, you're checking to see what is the latest, because things are released all the time, and is that being incorporated into my decisions? So my result from yesterday may not be the same result that I have tomorrow, because things that the human brain, because we're limited, think of as quasi-static and changes on a incremental basis. In the real world, it changes every day. So how do we integrate all those things into our process? So machine learning isn't, let me train a model, I got it, and then I execute. No, it's being able to look at what you've done, see is it still relevant or how it's changed, and what are the impacts. So really what it comes down to is AI and machine learning being an assistant to you, not replacing you, but assisting your decision-making process, or decision tool sets is what we're really talking about. So those decision tool sets, at the end of the day, the human in the loop has to make the call as far as what is it that we're trying to do and what's the best route to do it. And that if it wasn't that way, we wouldn't need us at all. We would just let computers do everything, and that would not be good for multiple reasons, because the computers do not have the art piece of it, right? So running a business, running a government organization, or being a startup will require you to uh, make decisions based upon a need that you see, assess, and come up with a solution for. It is not all mechanical. It's not all zeros and ones. So the question I have is, when it comes to cross-functional collaboration, who do you have at the table, and what vantage point do they have to offer to the process as a whole? And then from that, developing the correct tools and curating the correct data to get you the answers that provide what you need to be strategically, tactically, or economically ahead of your
I
curve.
would like to do is develop an AI agent that can do this for me.
Right.
That's where maybe we need to mash our head together and say, how do we develop an AI agent that lives in our laptop rather than
I'm also doing some analysis. So first off, when I pull down video and then want to convert video to transcripts and then do analysis on it, that it's not a model, it's multiple models. It would be lovely if it was just one model. So I'm looking at a model that uses, kind of does the Apple approach, uses other models and pulls it in and knows what to do, what each model can do, to kind of run AI locally, and it reaches out. Like we talked about a long time ago, we should have invented that because somebody has.
what we're talking about is in each device that we have, if we can push something like a edge device, it's zero latency right away. I mean, you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
calculate all the other benefits. I think this alone is the biggest benefit you can ask for. Is the reason Alexa doesn't work the way it potentially could is because it's processing the data not only internally in the device but in the data centers. So
Right.
by the time there's a latency of information that's coming in, and least amount of information that Alexa wants to give you is because how restricted it is from giving you those information.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's in the edge, it's a total different story, and the hardware component behind it costs less than a few $100s to implement.
Mm-hmm.
And the best part of it is that even if the semiconductor chips that you would think, oh, it has to come out from the space somewhere because it's so alien, we don't need that. We literally have ways to do digital and analog to process the information locally on the edge, right?
Right.
So the analog systems are coming back, and the digital system will be supplemented by the analog system. And because the analog systems are able to process the data on the edge faster, even
Mm-hmm.
for dumb chips. I mean, dumb as in like not 3NM or the
Mm-hmm.
ones that comes with the new MacBooks. It still is going to be able to do all the magical things. We don't have to develop a new semiconductor chips factory out in Arizona for that, right? We
Right.
just have to figure out how to take the old technology, integrate it with analog technology, and mix it for the edge purposes.
Right.
And that's just a one solution out of many things. So when I see all the hypes in the news cycle about buy this, buy that, buy this, buy that, I think people really need to know what buying is today and what buying do we prevent in the future, so that we don't have to keep buying these things over and over.
Exactly.
There's no repeat procurements anymore. It's like buy this once for next 5 years. There's no legacy system anymore, right?
Right.
Because in my opinion, AI legacy system is like legacy is last month.
Right.
What you bought
Exactly.
last month is already a legacy, and that to me is very troublesome. But feasibility and viability study is almost impossible with
Mm-hmm.
AI. But as a team, feasibility and viability conversations needs to really have that MLOps alignment. I think that's the way you make a decision as a team to say, yeah, even there's a hardware option, let's not go for it right now because we're waiting for the better hardware, or the
Mm-hmm.
hardware that we're going to actually buy, we're going to use it for this much of a time rather than to
Mm-hmm.
keep buying these things over and over, which in a 5-year life cycle, it ends up costing, ballooning the cost in dramatic fashion.
Right. Exactly. I believe that piece right there. I see a lot of money. It's always the game in consulting, but a lot of money is going to be wasted. A lot of companies is going to be their downfall if they are not cautious in how they implement. Right. Um, think about how many startups already, millions of dollars down the toilet. We have a wonderful model. Next week, there's a model that makes this one look, versus creating a a ongoing solution, and it's not just scalable, it truly evolves. An evolving solution that the evolution is something now that is of a quality that we can say, you know. So I recently was looking at something that was saying, well, Google's dead, the Google search is dead. Well, it's dead for a number of reasons. It's dying for a number of reasons. First off, you get 2 pages of sponsored ads before. So it wasn't that the information wasn't there. You buried it so deep that you put profits ahead of actual value to the consumer, right? So even if you had the right answer, people don't see you as the place to go to for answers. And so now you integrate AI, et cetera, but your reputation is already trashed. You know what I mean? And in this business, there's so many people, so many things looking to replace you, that if you don't maintain your position as the place that adds value, people will abandon you quickly. Who would think that Google of all places would be somewhere? There was a time when IBM was it. Now IBM had to leave so many spaces and focus on specific things to even remain profitable. So perhaps it's one of those things that come about when you get larger. My concern is, as AI gets larger, will it then become lethargic and lose focus and not provide the value? So,
You're talking about AI getting big and AI the size that it is today. These AIs are a lot of them are in silos. So there's a lot of these AI fear and AI concerns that government, corporations, universities, everybody has it. Even mom and dad has it, and mom and dad should, because that's who's going to be the impacted the most, is the next generation of kids.
mhm,
So psychologically, the kids are going to grow up to be something of different in the way we have grown up. We have grown up with newspapers that came in at 10 o'clock in the morning,
right,
right? That was our pretty much only source of information. And, until the next day, you had no information of the world other than watching TV at night, right?
right.
So the reason I say that specifically is because we talked about succession of process, right? Because if this is a people process technology, how do you do succession of the process? One of the things that matters the most is that we do keep it choppy, right?
Mhm.
So that way we are using our intellectual ability to identify problems, label those problems correctly, and come to a decision accordingly,
Right,
and repeat that process over time so we become predictable. As in,
right,
not only can we predict what's coming next, we are able to do what we have been doing for thousands of years, which is the
right,
capability. So I think there's lots of ways to explain these AI concerns, but one of the biggest concerns that I find is that even though we do this identifying, labeling, and decision making, our prediction capability, if it diminishes over time, what happens is the AI's prediction capability becomes superior
right,
because we're outsourcing our prediction capability to the AI.
right.
What we don't want to do is go beyond that decision making capability from the AI. Let the AI decide, but don't let the AI become the master of prediction
Absolutely.
capability. So the way you prevent that is to have choppy AIs everywhere. You want
Mhm.
to have a choppy AI that is not centralized to the point that a North Korean regime can influence the whole Asian continent,
Absolutely.
right?
Right,
So that choppy AI means that you have to really be delicate and balanced, not necessarily in identifying, labeling, and decision making. That's not the best of human brains or human intelligence. Best of human intelligence is this million years of evolution that has allowed us to predict the fact that what could come next.
right,
There's a sequence and a patterns that we have to really own up to and say that's the ownership that we want. So yes, there's a lot of fear about AI, but let's label that fear exactly to the point that we can start making decisions around that, rather than to say, "Yeah, I don't want to outsource my decision." No, you actually want your cognitive intelligence to be
right.
outsourced.
Well, that
Cognitive
goes
intelligence, you don't want to outsource is the predictive piece of it.
absolutely. Well, if you look at the micro and the macro of it, um, you want to have the right information at the right time in the right places, so that then people can execute, in the way that they need to. So, for example, is sometimes having the right answer is not enough. Knowing what to do is not enough. Knowing when to do it and how to do it. That is that again, that art piece, right? The art slash science of how do we become successful. There's nothing like watching so many ideas disappear because they were ahead of his time. Happens all the time, right? It was absolutely the right thing to do, but the market wasn't ready for it. People were not ready for it, or the way you implemented it was not what was needed in order for it to become mainstream or be integrated into just the way people do business on a day-to-day basis. So it's not just I know all this stuff. Here's the reality in life as humans. Nobody likes to know it all. Nobody, right? But if you have a highly intelligent person who knows how to integrate information in a way that allows people to consume it and absorb it as part of their norm, as part of, yeah, this is a good idea. So a lot of the times, just the information alone or being right is not.
Note about what's happening next is that there's a lot more people, corporations, organizations, government, nonprofits. They're all sort of moving into this AI space with the sort of at least a budget in hand rather than a budget that's not even in existence yet, right? So this budgets, I think one of the things that we have to really create a mindset around is that you don't want to invest in AI in a way that over time the cost of AI comes down.
Right.
What you need to do is actually do the reverse. Start small and grow it incrementally, but expect the budget of AI to go up because it's like sort of like having a baby that wears diaper and then
Mhm.
baby that goes to college, right?
Right.
Two different outcomes, two different costs, two different source of productivity, right? Two
Absolutely.
different types of activity. So in technology world, we've seen that reversely. Or it's like, if I spend this much today, over time the cost comes down. That's how the corporate world works. That's how our budgeting works. I think the shift is coming. The reverse is
To create something that's sustainable, I think when it comes to pricing and scalability, a lot of people like to use the word being able to grow rapidly, or be able to grow at scale. My concern would be this: just as what happened with SaaS is what happened with the cloud. Over time, it became a cost that escalated, that the cost savings you thought you would have from closing data centers disappeared. So how do we come up with a median, or things naturally progressing to a median as far as how much AI do you need, right?